Welcome to the RPG Podcast.
And we are live.
Oh, God, Patton!
Presented by SHEATH. A Time Wheel production.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. I am Bobby the Bank, and I'm here with Luis J. Gomez, comedian, founder of Gas Digital Network, host of the Real Ass Podcast, half host of Yo MMA Raps, and 1/3 of Legion of Skanks. Thank you for joining me here, sir.
What's going on, Robert? How are you? I'm very happy to be here. Very happy to be wearing SHEATH underwear right now, as always.
I got my Legion of Skanks.
Hell yeah, dude! Always supporting each other, which I love.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and just showing some love here to the fans of SHEATH that came here from you introducing them to SHEATH. You've been a big part of our growth over the past couple of years. Your company, Gas Digital Network, and and I see that growing. We're both kind of like in a stage of growth of our companies where we're doing pretty well. But can you tell me how it all started?
Sure. You know how it all started. That's a very long story. So for anybody who doesn't know, I'm sure a lot of people do. I run Gas Digital with my partner Ralph Sutton. Gas Digital stands for Gomez and Sutton. And that's our podcast network. And sort of under that umbrella of a podcast network, we do our own ad sales. We work with SHEATH and a multitude of other great, amazing advertisers that support great comedy through thick and thin.
Shout out to Yo Kratom.
Shout out to Yo Kratom. Love Yo Kratom. Love those guys.
For sure.
But not only that, but the merch side and our live production company, we produce obviously live events, and I produce Skankfest, which is technically a different company, but it all sort of falls under the same umbrella and the same marketing and the same world. The house that Legion of Skanks built, as we like to call it, behind closed doors. Me and Ralph were both just podcasters that were sort of small potatoes. You know, when we started Gas Digital, Legion of Skanks, it was funny because we went on to Compound Media, which was Anthony Cumia's network. And before we signed on with his network, our show wasn't a very big show. We always had sort of a dedicated following, and we were very funny, but it wasn't a really, really big show. And then we went into Compound Media, and they sort of like hit all the numbers. So we didn't even know how big the show was really when we were on Compound Media. And me and my partner, Ralph Sutton, we started Gas Digital because I had another show. I had a Real Ass Podcast that I was doing, which had a couple thousand listens an episode. It wasn't a big following at all. It was just a couple thousand people. And I was working with a network on the Upper West Side, and they were sort of treating me like I wasn't much of a priority. And I get it now. Now that I run a podcast network and we have 25 podcasts, and you see there's the smaller shows. You can't necessarily treat them as much as a priority as the bigger shows. Sort of the idea is grow your show. But I saw something in my audience, and the way that I put it was, if there was 2,000 people showing up every week to a parking lot and listening to me speak, the government would shut it down. They would bring in, there'd be helicopters. They'd be like, what is going on? Is this guy planning on overthrowing the guy? Like I was like, 2,000 people is a lot of people to be showing up every week. That's like a fucking army. And I knew that there was something really valuable about that. And, for me and Ralph had a very similar thing. His show, the SDR show, wasn't a very large show, didn't have a huge following, but both of us were hustlers, and we were both doing whatever we could do to grow our shows organically. We were just trying to stay at the forefront of whatever the new technologies were in podcasting.
This episode is brought to you by Third Eye Cacao. We're so happy to have a brand new sponsor. We want you to support our sponsors because they make these shows possible. Third Eye Cacao is on a mission to preserve ceremonial grade cacao in the world and invite others on a journey from their head to their heart. Cacao is a fruit where chocolate comes from and is one of the most nutrient-dense superfoods on the planet. It has been called the elixir of the gods for its ability to open up the heart. Studies have shown that the same endorphins that get released when you are falling in love for the first time, cacao has the power to induce also. It's like the best feeling in the world. And cacao has that for you here at Third Eye Cacao. Overall, cacao has the powerful ability to begin any day with intention and ceremony. Use promo code TIMEWHEEL, that's TIMEWHEEL, at checkout and save 11% at thirdeyecacao.com. This episode is also brought to you by SHEATH, the underwear of legends. It is the underwear with the dual pouch system. One pouch for one part of the male anatomy, another for the other part of the male anatomy. Not only is the underwear the most comfortable underwear you'll ever wear, but it also has the most stylish designs and patterns. The fabrics actually have a cooling effect when you put them on for the very first time. Your body will thank you because it's one of the hottest parts of your body. So cooling it down with these special fabrics that SHEATH provides is a nice experience. The proof is in the pudding. We have a 100% money back guarantee on the very first pair. If you don't like it, we'll send you your money back. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code RPG and save 20%. We appreciate your support. Back to the show.
And whatever tools you could use to grow your show, me and him were both getting on the phone with advertisers, we just doing whatever we could do to just sell an ad, even though we really couldn't convert anything and we didn't really have enough of an audience to really make that big of a difference. We both were just doing what was absolutely necessary in order to turn this into a business. And we were looking at it from the perspective of a small podcaster. So we sort of started sharing ideas. Big J. Okerson introduced us. We started sharing ideas regularly, and both of us were unhappy with the networks we were on. We felt like they really weren't doing anything, and we said, well, why don't we start our own podcast network where we're looking out for the little guy. We're looking at it from the perspective of the little guy, and how to turn this into a business for smaller podcasts, not just the shows that have hundreds of thousands of listeners. It actually didn't even start off as a podcast network. It started off as we were going to do the first live podcasting venue. Right. Uh-huh. So the idea was it was going to be called The Pod. And you were going to have like Bluetooth headphones, or there was like radio headphones where everyone would be on headphones in the venue. So you go to the bathroom, you're still listening to the live podcast, you're getting a drink. And it was in the round. So the podcasters would be at a table and all the people would be around us. And once we started doing the research and talking to investors, it was like, that was impossible to sort of get off the ground, without much money. I mean, the amount of money that it was going to cost to open a venue like that was going to be crazy. And the idea sort of shifted to the podcast network after we started working together and after we started sharing ideas together. We said we want to be in business together. And that's how Gas Digital was born, essentially.
Nice. It sounds like you kind of do that format though with Legion of Skanks. Is that how you always did it?
Yes. So that was it. We were doing a live Legion of Skanks show, and we saw that it was something that was somewhat unique. This is, Kill Tony wasn't a live show. There really wasn't any live podcasts. We were, not to toot my own horn here, but we were, pretty much ahead of the curve on a lot of these things. But Gas Digital, our format. And our platform, our premium side existed before Patreon was something that podcasters were using. That wasn't even a thing. Patreon came out after the fact, and everyone started going like, oh yeah, we should be, having some sort of subscription service. But we were doing that before Patreon. We've always been a little bit ahead of the curve, and that's sort of the challenge of doing what we do, is how do we keep on staying ahead of the curve? How do we keep on reinventing ourselves? Because we are not, and you know this better than anybody, we're not a tech company. We are not, programmers. We are podcasters, and we're podcast producers, and we're creators. And in spite of our lack of tech savvy, we've grown it to be a pretty big business that people love.
Yeah. Did you go to college?
Yes, but no. I went to a year of community college, and that was easier than high school. That was like very, very easy for me to navigate my way through, because that was my whole schooling career has been figuring out how to get maximum results out of the bare minimum effort, right? And community college is that. You set up a very specific, your first year of community college, it's really easy classes. You set up your schedule, you're smoking weed in the parking lot with your friends, you're playing hacky sack in the corridor. You got an hour and a half of classes on Tuesday. This is great, right? Then I went to Baruch College in New York City, which is City University of Business School. And that was real college. And that was, 4-hour classes, 3-hour marketing courses. And it was not fun. And I very, very quickly just started cutting classes. And what happened was I answered an ad in the Village Voice while I was going to Baruch College. This is actually my introduction to comedy in general.
Great.
I answered an ad in the Village Voice to promote for comedy club. Street team promoters wanted, right? And you can make $60 to $150 a day. That was the range that they told you could make.
Is that where you go out and like hand out flyers and stuff?
I would sell tickets, actually. It wasn't even handing out flyers. What we would do is we would sell, it was 8 passes for $20. And then once you get to the club, there's still a 2-drink minimum. So essentially, a group of tourists, or you sell them to college kids or whatever, but they still got to buy drinks. We, kept 50% of the ticket sales, and we gave it to our the company that hired us, which was called New Genesis Marketing Solutions. And I answered that ad, and my first day out there selling comedy club tickets, I made like $80. And I was just like a poor kid from the suburbs. And that was a lot of money for me. Even at that time, my first week I made like $500. And I was like, This is it. I never need another job in my life. This is going to be my future. And in a weird way it was, because from selling comedy club tickets, what's funny, the first day I sold comedy club tickets, the same guy that answered the same ad that trained the same day was Kurt Metzger, who was a great comedian. Can't Get Rate is a great podcast here on the Gas Digital Network. And but I was actually introduced to the real comedians because Kurt was already doing comedy. He did it for one day and he was like, this job sucks, and he disappeared. But we sort of, knew who each other were from that job that one day. And once I sort of got into producing comedy years later, after I was promoting for comedy, I started producing comedy before I was even doing comedy.
Wow.
Me and Metzger linked up, and he introduced me to Big J. Okerson, Nate Bargatze, Mike Vecchione, Joe DeRosa. I mean, all the guys that became like the guys that I looked up to most. That's sort of my in was specifically through Kurt Metzger, specifically through the street team. But yeah, I got introduced to the world of comedy. I was selling tickets for the New York Comedy Club. And very quickly, I've always had an entrepreneurial sort of spirit and attitude. Very quickly, I realized that I was like, I don't really need to go to these guys and get tickets. I can go to another comedy club, print my own tickets, and start my own business.
Yeah.
And at like 21 years old, I had a street team of 40 or 50 guys out there in New York City that were just hawking comedy club tickets. And we were making a ton of money, bringing a ton of people to the comedy club. And then I started producing shows. I had a background in producing music. I was, booking bands like Coheed and Cambria and Sworn Enemy when I was in high school for just music halls and various things. Wow. So I always wanted to produce. So I started producing comedy shows. And then after a while, I was like, well, I could host my own comedy shows. I had the bug. I kind of wanted to get on stage. And slowly but surely, I started becoming more and more involved. And this just became, my life. And all of these businesses, it all started off with answering that ad in the Village Voice. If I didn't pick up that, actually, what's funny is I was late to the interview. I almost didn't go to the interview because I was on rollerblades, and in New York City, Broadway, Broadway runs through the length of Manhattan, if you know Manhattan. But I was just dumb, and I was new to New York City, so I was on West Broadway. I'm looking for this place, and I can't find it. I'm pouring sweat. I'm on rollerblades trying to find this, and I was like an hour late for the interview, and I almost gave up. I was like, fuck this. I'm not going to do this. And who knows where my life would have been. I have no idea where I'd be right. I know I would not be talking to the CEO of SHEATH Underwear. I'll tell you that much.
That's right. You made it, baby boy. Big time. I've always been entrepreneurial also. I was selling these, they were like these vacation packages to Vegas when I was like 19, and before that I was selling weed and coke and shit like that, just because I was always trying to be bigger, be more than I was. Kind of, you look around, compare yourself to your peers, and it's just natural to want to be like a step ahead, I think. Right. And did you ever fall into the drug game as far as dealing?
Yeah, I mean a little bit. Like I sold weed and I sold mushrooms. I was too much of I don't want to say drug addict because that has more negative connotations, but drug addict in the funny sense. Like I'm currently a drug addict. I'm smoking weed in my hotel room. Like, so in that sense, like, yeah, I could never sell weed because I would smoke my profits,
Exactly.
Mushrooms were great because you can only take a fucking eighth of mushrooms. So that's what I'm saying? So, and when I sold mushrooms in large quantities. So I just had to connect. It's not like I bagged it up and sold eighths of mushrooms. I had a connect that would sell me quarter pounds to pounds of mushrooms at a time. Jesus. And then I wouldn't even buy a pound. They would front me the pound, and then I'd get 4 other guys that wanted a quarter pound, and because they're so scarce, you could really decide whatever the market, there was no real market to decide what mushrooms were, right? So we jacked up the prices, and off of very few transactions, I would make thousands of dollars at a time. And that was my only real foray into quote unquote drug dealing. And it was very easy. I was kind of connected and I knew everybody. I was always a guy who sort of knew everybody. I was a kid, if you wanted to find drugs, you'd come to me because I knew 5 people that could get everybody drugs. So drug dealing, no, it was more or less like I had in my possession a pound of mushrooms, and then I gave it to my 4 friends, and now I had $1,500. It didn't feel like drug dealing so much, but yes, but by every technical standard, if the police had caught me, I would have gotten into a ton of trouble. But that wasn't my hustle. My hustle, I always hustled, like legitimately was like a hustler. Like I was a kid in my neighborhood when I was 8 years old. Before I even had the strength to really shovel snow, I was knocking on people's doors asking if I could shovel their driveways when there was a snowstorm. I was raking leaves. I was whatever it was, an iced tea stand, a lemonade stand. In elementary school, I started making toys. I didn't know how to make toys. I told this girl, I was like, yeah, I make my sister's Barbie toys all the time, like her Barbie house I fucking got this shitty wood, and I was not good with wood or my hands. I literally got shitty scrap wood from like behind my house, and I cut together the shittiest little Barbie bed you could ever imagine. It was crazy. Wow. And I painted it, and I sold it to her like it was fucking, like it had Mattel stamped on the side of it. You should have seen me. I was always looking for a way to make cash. I was always hyper aware of how poor I was. My mother being on welfare, I was very embarrassed of my mother being on welfare and being on food stamps. My dad was killed when I was a very young kid, and I was just like, I looked down at my mother very often because I felt like she was lazy, and I just had this in me where I wanted to work. My mom stopped buying me Christmas presents when I was 10 and school clothes when I was 10, you know what I'm saying? So I stopped having, if I wanted cool shit, I had to literally earn it myself. So by the time I was like 10, 11 years old, I was like breaking into people's cars and taking like, not like even radios or anything like that, but like change out of the console, like trying to find a $5 bill.
Similar things.
And not even breaking into cars.
If it was unlocked.
If the car was unlocked, I wouldn't break a window. I wasn't like a crazy kid. I was just like, we'd go to the ShopRite parking lot and we just open the doors of all the cars for video game money. We, for summer camp so we can go to the movies, or we had like a day camp we would go to, and it was survival. And it was a lot of those skills, whereas it's not, I would not recommend any kid to go out and do that. A lot of that, my entrepreneurial spirit came from the fact that I had to survive, and it was hypersensitive to how poor we were. I didn't want to be poor growing up. It was something that so I remember one time my neighbor died when I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. My neighbor died, and they just took all of his like furniture and belongings, and they were putting them in the trash. So me and another kid from the neighborhood just literally marched and took all of the stuff and put it in my yard and put a yard sale sign. Smart. And just put price tags on everything. And we made like $100 for the day.
Wow.
But we're like kids, dude. It was so much money for like for a kid. Like you're just buying candy. Like it was nuts. So yeah, I've always had that in me for as long as I can remember, and I've always wanted to work for myself. I wasn't good in school. I wasn't good at working for somebody else, having a boss. My only jobs that I've been successful in have really been sales jobs. And that's because any sales manager knows you got to make them feel like they're the boss. You got to make the salesman feel like they're the head of their own business, and they are at the helm of their own business. And, you know, then the sky's the limit with them. So I gravitated towards sales jobs, and I've done very well at sales jobs, and just, you know, sales excites me. Business excites me. Talk like this is an exciting conversation for me because I like talking about business. I like talking about, this side of it. And I don't really get to explore this side of what I do as much when I'm on Legion of Skanks or Realize Podcast or any of these other shows. So, but that's another. If I wasn't doing comedy, without a doubt, I'd be a car salesman. I fantasize about being a car salesman.
You'd move plenty of cars. I'm sure.
I'd fucking crush it as a car salesman. I think I'd make more money. I think
of car
very quickly I would have my own car dealership. I think about it every day of my life, Robert. Don't tempt me to leave this industry.
Well, there's a lot of options, and I'm sure you would do well because you figure it out as you go along, right? You have the vision, and then you make it happen. Just like Skankfest, for instance, we were there in November here in Houston, and that whole setup, the venue, the tickets, the talent, the merch, coordinating everything and having it go off like it did. And we're looking forward to Vegas here in October, but that seems like just a lot of coordination and getting that done. I'm sure you have a team to help you.
Well, I have a team to help me at this point, but most people don't act on their ideas, right?
Yep.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
And everything that I do, including Skankfest and Gas Digital, it's just literally me jumping in without a safety net and saying, we're going to do it. And human nature, if you have enough belief in yourself, you get it done. We just get it done.
Yeah.
We're goal oriented. We're designed to hit goals,
Nice.
And once you start to understand that and you start to look at yourself and you start to go like, oh shit, I'm only as limited as
I limit myself.
Yeah, but it's like, just fucking declare it. Like Skankfest, I was like, we're doing a comedy festival. Simple as that. And everyone was like, what? And I was like, well, we're going to start from there. Here's the date. Let's work backwards.
Yes.
And that's every time we do Skankfest now, I'm like, let's forget all the other bullshit. Let's get the venue. Let's pick a date. And all of the other pieces will fill in. We don't need to get a sponsor before we fucking pick the date. We don't need to book a headliner before. I don't need to do any of that. And it's worked. It's worked every single time.
People talk themselves out of doing these things because they're like, oh, I got to do all this first. And then before they even start, it's over. So
you have to force yourself sometimes, and that's one of the biggest things in business that I've learned. It's just simply jumping in. There's if you've ever gone cliff diving before, and I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
You fucking look, there's the kids who are standing out looking over the cliff going, fuck. And they stand up there for an hour, or there's the kids who just jump and once you do it, and once you jump in, you realize everything is a lot of fun and everything sort of takes care of itself in a weird way. I trust my own instincts on a whole other level. Like me and Ralph, when we started Gas Digital or even Skankfest, it's not like we come into it with a very detailed business plan, and it's not like we have these crazy projections, and it's not like that's not really like we go from the gut very often. And I look at a company like Gas Digital, which is, it's a very, very big business that is really valuable. And I go like, wow, dude, that was our instincts. Like we literally we sort of just went, fuck it. Like, let's roll the dice here. Cause we didn't really know how big the business would get. We didn't know how intricate the technical side of the business would get. So I'm really proud of that, but it's very, and I'm not even saying that I have unbelievable instincts. I think human beings have natural instincts, all of us. And I think if we trust our first instinct, more often than not, that first instinct is correct. Whether it's on personal relationships, ideas that you have, things that you want to do, if you just sort of trust your gut really tells you something. And I think that people should do that a little bit more often.
Yeah, it's like a second brain, and it's just like your heart kind of, sometimes some people might say it's the universe kind of giving you a hint to follow your path, your path in this life. We all have our own kind of destinies, and it might be conveyed in a gut feeling, and a lot of people would just ignore that or talk themselves out of it, or somebody else you might be like, I'm going to do it. And then somebody tells you why you can't do it. And you're like, you're right. I can't do that. And did anyone try to tell you couldn't do it? Like this podcast, the Gas Digital, for instance? Not really.
I mean, probably. I just sort of put blinders on, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, and the other thing is like, you know, like, we have a lot of people that really like sort of depend on us. We have a lot of podcasters and producers, and it's just sort of this whole world that we've created.
Yeah.
So, and the people that are negative in my world, and the people that don't have sort of this blind belief and the ability to sort of grow these things, they sort of very quickly get pushed out, you know? So I don't, it's not like I have a bunch of yes men. No, I have a bunch of people who really truly believe in what we're doing. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's a producer or a podcaster, whoever it is, they don't get it, they don't see it, and they go in a different path. And sometimes they're very successful. You look at it like a Tim Dillon or Are You Garbage? These guys worked with us, and they decided to go off and do their own thing, and then they fucking absolutely murdered it, you know, and then they killed it with Patreon and other platforms, and that's awesome, you know. So it's not like the path to success is working with me or with Gas Digital, but there's a reason that, you know, 95% of the people we've worked with stick around, and they fight to stick around. You know, it's because we're doing some things that are really right. So we have a really positive sort of, you know, just a really positive crew of people around us. I love the producers at Gas Digital. I mean, dude, they breathe this business. They really, really do. And before Gas Digital existed, podcast producer wasn't even a job. That was not a job 8 years ago. Nobody, like, you didn't even hear about that. You heard about Jamie on the Rogan podcast, or Red Band before that, you know.
Yeah.
You heard about a few guys that were probably making money from their massively successful friends that were, you know, doing podcasts. But the idea of somebody coming in, we have, you know, 3 engineers that work for Gas Digital. We have 11 or 12 producers that are, you know, producers that are both on air and segment producers. We have post-production producers, editors, interns. We have such a robust crew of people, and everyone has very specific jobs, and that genuinely didn't exist when we started this business.
You are a pioneer, sir. We have our podcast producer. He didn't show up today because he's moving, but it's handy to have someone there to facilitate. You can just show up, you know, and get on the mic instead of having, like, if you had to do everything yourself, it could be. It's easy, but it can get overwhelming if you know. Yeah,
well, I think that was sort of back in the day, you know, there was the barrier of entry was the knowledge and how to do it. And not that many people knew how to do it. So it's why Legion of Skanks exists. You know, it's because I knew how to produce a podcast.
Wow.
You know, if I didn't have the equipment and how to produce it, I don't know that Big J and Dave, it's not like we were going to all come in and do equal parts. You know, those guys needed something to be produced for them. They needed to be able to show up, you know. So you have some great stuff because of that. You know, look, the reality is, like, if Leonardo DiCaprio had to direct his own movies, you probably would never have great Leonardo DiCaprio movies, you know?
Exactly.
You know, so the reality is and as the business began to sort of grow, that side of it became, you know, very, very important. Now everyone's a fucking diva. Now everyone's got a podcast producer. Everyone's got it all.
I know, it's like everyone has a podcast, but how many podcasts do you think, like, shows do you think there are?
I have no idea. I mean,
like, let's say 1 million. You think it's more than 1 million?
Who knows? Probably
more than 1 million. Because
it's crazy. It's the amount of podcasts that are out there. It's nuts.
True, but I still think, if nothing else, you have fun and you learn and you grow as a person. And if nobody's watching, you're having these good, detailed conversations that are uninterrupted, and you can really practice conversations. And it carries over to the other areas of life where it can benefit you just by, I think, having a podcast, even if no one watches. Like this one. Just kidding. Everyone out there watching, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. I was thinking earlier, like, your mom kind of maybe did you a favor by not giving you, you know, stuff in hindsight.
Yes.
That's all.
You know, look, I have no regrets. I got a great life. I got a great kid. You know, there's nothing in the world that I would change, you know, so, like, yeah, I've benefited from more love and more, you know, more opportunity. Could I have benefited from, you know, just the benefits that, you know, other kids who are privileged have, like a child psychologist, of dealing with my father's death. Like, that was processed by not talking about it ever.
Wow.
Right? That's like how, like most kids today, if they lose a parent at 4 years old, they're going to be in some sort of therapy. They're going to be in some sort of program. They're going to like deal with it in a way that wasn't dealt with. I was just dealt with my mom being abusive and not really ever discussing how it affected me or any of that. So could there have been benefits to all that? For sure. You know, I don't know. Would it be better off or worse off? Who knows? I just know that I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't have this career. I wouldn't have my kid. I wouldn't, you know, there'd be a different version of me that would be somewhere out there, for better or worse. I just, you know, I don't look at any of those things in my past as being, you know, they're all good, they're all bad. It's what, you know, it's what you make of it. You know, my kid is super spoiled, you know, but I think my son's going to change the fucking world.
Beautiful.
You know, and I don't think I have to deprive him anything in order to tap into that. I think I'm tapping into it in other ways by being there as a, you know, a supportive father and giving him literally every tool possible to go out and create and do what he wants to do with his life. I literally look at, like, you know, the fucking, you know, the sky's the limit. This kid can go out and be president. He can fucking go out and he can change the world. He can, in such crazy, massive ways. So
I think that about my daughter, and she's...
No, your daughter's not going to do much, but my son, he's going to fucking crush it. No, I'm kidding.
He could be president after her. She'll be the first female.
How old's your daughter?
21.
Oh, 21. Oh, geez. So she's old, dude.
Yeah, she's a geezer, but
nice.
We have the same birthday. We just I turned 44. She turned 21. I had her on my 23rd birthday, and she's going to college. And I was giving her like everything. I would give her, like, in high school, I was giving her like $800 a month just for, and I didn't even know what she would ask me for money. I'd give her money. And finally I went and looked at the bank statements and saw, I was like, maybe over providing, because you don't want to get, you need them to provide for themselves ultimately, because I don't want her to be 30 and, you know, coming to daddy or whatever. But
of course,
she's really good. Madison, she has 2 jobs. She's in college. She's about to graduate on time.
When you name your daughter Madison, are you saying, all right, well, look, I'm 50-50 shot she's gonna be a stripper now. I'm giving her a stripper name. I don't, like, did you decide that? You said you're gonna wing it. It didn't matter to you.
My wife and at the time and I were separated. She came up with the name. I probably would have come up with a different name.
She did it to fuck with you.
Yeah,
she's like, you know what?
She was like, fuck him. I'm gonna name him after the girl from Splash, the mermaid, or James Madison. But nice. She's doing great. Very, like, her mom died, and yeah. So and your dad died, and I was thinking, when you talked about your mom not really dealing with it with you, it made me think about how I dealt with it with Madison. And it's kind of, we were separated already. Had already been divorced, and she died from like alcoholism.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was so hard to, like, break that to my daughter. I'm like,
oh, you were the one who told her?
Yeah. Ooh. And I was just trying to get it out. I, like, fucking lost it, and then she lost it, and then because how do you tell someone their mom died?
Was it, like, surprising, or was she, like, in the hospital?
It was kind of, she had been drinking a lot, which is partially why we got separated. And then when we got separated, it turned into, like, I saw her one time, like, she woke up, my ex-wife, she turned to her bedside table, pulled a bottle of vodka out, and, like, took a sip, because that's how she got up out of bed. And that's where it was headed. So it wasn't like a total surprise, but we sent her away to go get help, and then she ended up dying while she was, quote unquote, getting help. And
Jesus Christ, man, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm sorry. I'd like to have to look.
Yeah,
I got to tell my son that we're about to put down our dog. And
oh my God.
I'm avoiding it like the plague. It is fucking. Yeah. I have no idea. So when you say this, I couldn't even imagine the fucking how hard it's gonna. I mean, dude, that, and you have to be the one, you know. Yeah. And there's no,
put that off on anyone else.
There's no, yeah. I mean, I might try to put it off on, like, Carrington or one of the interns.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would deal with it, dude. That's fucking crazy, dude.
You rip off the Band-Aid and then you deal with it. But
how long ago was it?
It's been about 5-6 years. Jeez. So she was 14, and she's just now going to therapy. But I didn't really know how to talk to her about it, because, like, it was just a fucked up situation because her mom kind of like did it to herself. And how do you explain something like that to a 14-year-old? Like, she couldn't control herself and she just like took the bottle to the head and it was done.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We're not talking about me, but same thing happened to my dad. So we are talking about me.
What happened to my mom too? My mom ended up dying. She had cancer, but she like killed herself with heroin. Like she just gave up on life.
Yeah,
so that was the end of her life.
Gave up. He was just like, I'm done. I'm gonna finish it, and he kept turning the bottle up until it was over. And he kind of hid himself, but he was a good dude. At least I got to know him. I mean, you didn't necessarily get to know your dad because I don't know how that would be growing up without a parent from early childhood. That seems like it would be. Just you're different, you know, everyone else has a dad and you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was something that like, you know, it made me long for a family. That was probably the hardest thing about breaking up with my son's mother was the fact that like, I think all I wanted my whole life was a family, you know? And when we broke up, that was fucking, it was brutal. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not giving my kid a family, and now I don't have a family. And it was really, really, really difficult. And it took a lot of fucking therapy. It took a lot of like looking at myself to sort of even get myself to a place where I could be happy, because it was a really, really dark place. Honestly, a lot of my therapy was starting Gas Digital and starting, you know, because that's around the time that me and my son's mother separated. So yeah, dude, it's fucking. You know, these are all fucking heavy things that you got to deal with in life, you know, but the reality is like, you know, in spite of all these things, and these are fucking this as hard as it gets. You're naming things that are as hard as it gets, you know, so am I. These are fucking tough, you know, and I don't stay hyper focused on all the sad shit and the darkness in my life. I try to make jokes out of it for the most part, you know, but the real positive that comes out of these things is the fact that we sort of bury ourselves in our work. We put our heads down, bite our fucking mouthpieces, and just keep swinging, you know, and I think that, you know, in spite of that darkness, or, you know, to me, honestly, maybe because of that darkness, I was able to put on some blinders and really, really work and not be, you know, because if I was looking at the personal side of things and I was looking at my personal life, I might have gotten too depressed or sad or fucked up to even move the ball down the field, you know, but it was like, well, now I can be hyper focused on work. I have massive ADD. I'm assuming you do as well. Like my ADD is like fucking through the roof. Like I can.
It's hard to focus on one thing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because like moving from like project to project, and I kind of work good. I've worked decent like that. I'm actually reading this book though by Jim Quick called Limitless, and there's this one little paragraph of the whole book so far that I've read that was actually really helpful, and it's dealing with focus. And I don't know where you stand on certain, like the mind and meditating and how it all works, trying to be at one with the universe and stuff. But anyways, he said that there's a light in our mind. Okay, so there's like, it's a metaphorically like a light shining towards whatever you're focusing on. And if, as we're focusing, the light kind of shifts over to what I need to do today or some other project, you're supposed to just bring that light back to the thing you're working on. And metaphorically, it has, for the past week or so, it's really helped me, because I'll notice like I'm doing something and then my mind starts veering, this light, quote unquote, starts veering towards something else. And typically I would just go do something else. But in this case, I'm like, no, shine the light back on the fucking book you're reading, bitch, and finish doing what you're doing. And I'm like, it is weirdly working for me. So just putting that out there for those of you that come here for some tips.
Yeah. I don't even know. My light is it's like a lighthouse. It's just going in a quick circle all over the place at all times. There's no really focusing in on one thing, but it works for me to a certain degree, you know?
Yeah.
I wish if I could literally have one thing that I could do, I wish I could just fucking snap myself into I know the answer. We all know the answer, right? We all know the answer. Like if you stepped outside of yourself, right? And the answer to every problem in your life, Robert, you probably have at the very least a good starting point and a good guiding light as to how to fix every problem in your life. You know, there's probably nothing that you have that if you were to sit down, I were to really press you, that you wouldn't say, well, I think this would be step number one. I got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. We don't do it very often, whether it's with our health, our personal life, sex life, love life, business, whatever it is. We know exactly the game plan. We're smart. We're the masters of our own fucking destiny. We're smart dudes. We fucking create these things that we love and that other people love. But we don't do it for some reason. And I wish I could just have a little bit more of the just do it. You know, I wish I can get up every morning and do jujitsu at 6:30 in the morning and then not look at my phone, but as soon as I'm done with jujitsu, shower, steam, go back out, do all of my emailing, do all of my phone calling, and then by 10 a.m. have all of the work, the business shit that's sort of absolutely necessary every day, completely done. And start my day off there. And then I look at my phone, then I go into social media. Then I start, you know, flirting with chicks online or whatever I'm going to fucking do, or, you know, planning my podcast, because that's fun. Let's get real. Planning a podcast is a lot of fun, right? Going and doing a podcast is a lot of fun.
How do you plan for a podcast?
For me, my producers know to call me a couple hours before the podcast to actually talk about the stories with me. I like to talk about the stories before I go over them. This is on all of them. This is on me and Big J do this on Legion of Skanks.
Beautiful.
And what'll happen is, but I do this with Shannon for Real Ass Podcast, and I do this with Vic on Yo MMA Rap. And what they do is it's their job to go over like a bullet point, be like, all right, so this happened today. You know, Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. And then me and the producer talk about it. And what I'm looking for is, do I have an opinion on this? Do I have a different perspective? Do I have something to say about it? Am I inspired for other little things to branch off with little conversations with that conversation with the producer? Because if I'm going to be inspired with that producer in that moment, more than likely when I'm with Zach and two other great comedians, or I'm with Dave Smith, who's an incredible broadcaster, one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my entire life, or Big J, who's literally the funniest person on the planet. If I can get it going with them and get my juices flowing with my producer, I'm going to more than likely be able to get my juices flowing on this topic with the other performers that are in the room as well. And then if I'm not inspired by anything, I say, throw it to the side. I'm not really into that. And that's sort of how I do my prep. And it's like a little 15-minute phone conversation it's almost like a dress rehearsal for the podcast on what I'm going to sort of say and do and what I'm thinking. And, you know, because very often it is off the top of my head and it is improv, but to not know the direction sometimes is a missed opportunity. You have to work out these thoughts sometimes, you know, and because then I go like, fuck, you know, because then I'll talk about it in another podcast, and then I talk about it in a more enlightened way or in a way that makes more sense or a funnier way. Nice. And I go, I should have just honestly put a little bit of thought into it and not had something thrown at me, which can look as a different style as well, like improv games, and you can, you know, have something that's a surprise. That's a whole other element, but that's a different version. I like to be the person surprising the podcasters, right? So when I have people in my studio doing a show with me, they don't go over the notes the same way that I do, you know, because I like to sort of get the reaction out of them and sort of see where they're at. But if somebody came to me and said, hey, you know what, give me the notes because I really like to have a thought on everything before you go over it, I'd respect that and I'd appreciate it. I'd go, here, by all means, if that's the way that you want to perform, that's the way you want to perform. What I do really well is I collaborate well. And this is whether it's creatively, business-wise, I work pretty well with people. And I think I do a good job at getting the best out of the people that I work with. I inspire people to be the best versions of themselves. Maybe it's because I'm such a shitbag that they feel like the better versions of themselves comparatively. I have no idea. But either way, that's one of the things that I think that I have that's a superpower. I think we all have superpowers in the world. But one of my superpowers is when I go near creative, smart, brilliant people, I draw creative, smart, brilliant things out of them. I think more so than the average person.
Wow. I love hearing you talk like that about like we all have superpowers, because I think everyone thinks of themselves in a limited fashion, whereas I try to think of ourselves as unlimited and abundance, and there's more than enough to go around. We can all eat our share of the pie and have fun. And
Doggy, there is a path right now for you and I to 1 year from now to be billionaires on our own private islands, doing doing whatever we want to do with our life. Like that reality. There's an infinite amount of decisions and paths that we can make to get there. That's the way my mind thinks. I really believe it. I truly, truly believe it. And this is, I've gotten better as I've gotten older at being empathetic and understanding that that's also one of my superpowers. Being able to think that way and see that, being able to go like, oh, I can be a billionaire in a year. Not many people think that way. Most people go, no, there's no fucking way. It's absolutely impossible. And I go, well, no, impossible. What are you talking about? There's many ways. What do you, there's, and then if you really believe that, you put one foot in front of the other, because I want to start going down that path. When the people say, no, that's impossible, they're moving backwards or they're staying stagnant. You know, now I probably won't be a billionaire in a year. Probably not. But if I believe I can be, and I start going down that path, you know, it's the old saying, you know, shoot for the moon and you'll hit the stars, or whatever the fuck it is, right? Like that, yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know what's further, stars, moon, who knows? But the point is, you know, I think most people, 99% of the people, don't have a belief in their own ability to achieve some sort of greatness. And I think that right there, I know that is like Michael Jordan's fast twitch muscle fiber. Like I have that, I've learned to be appreciative of that. Right. And all the other shit, all the sad shit in my life, and my mama being abusive and my dad being murdered and blah, 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 blah. You know, that's fine and dandy, but I have this fast twitch muscle fiber in me that enables me to believe in my ability to do things that I think you can't learn it. I think it's invaluable. The same way that Michael Jordan was born to be able to be that crazy of an athlete, I think that, you know, I'm not saying I'm the Michael Jordan of business or the Michael Jordan of comedy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I feel like I have that sort of fucking power. I really do.
I love that. His quote, like, I've failed and I've failed and I've failed, which is why I succeed. That's one of my favorite
it's great
quotes. And having that belief, like I feel I have it. I feel like I can do great things. Obviously, you just figure it out along the way. And you were saying something though, and it's kind of the reverse segue, because what do you think is holding you back? Because you're doing so great, but you think you could even do better. Like what is holding you back? I'll tell you what I think might hold me back sometimes, which is weed. I smoke a lot of weed all the time. I smoke a lot of weed too. Yeah, and it's like, fuck, could I be doing better if I didn't smoke weed like all day?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Probably. But so, you know, it's like, I think that same thing, you know, and then when I don't smoke weed, I'm like, oh shit, I'm so clear headed. And then after a little while, the anxiety kicks in and I'm trying to fight, you know, a guy who's making my sandwich at the deli. So I'm like, maybe I need some weed, you know, just to get myself to the next day, because if I get stabbed to death, then what does it matter? Right. So I don't know. I think that these are all little variables that don't actually matter. You know, I have this, you know, I have a tattoo on my body, which is a 2-7 offsuit, right? And it's just the philosophy that I have. I love this philosophy, right? And the idea, and you know, if you play poker, obviously,
of course,
it's the lowest hand. Lowest hand you can get in poker is a 2-7 offsuit. And what the tattoo means is just to play your hand. You can't control those cards, right? And yes, you can control whether or not you smoke weed. No, you can't control whether or not it has a grasp on you the way it has a grasp on you. So that's really, because I'm a weed head, right? I'm a pothead, and it has a grasp on me, and I have to smoke weed every day in order to fucking get through the day. That's the way that I feel. So instead of fighting that fight, I say that's just a card that I can't really control right now, or maybe I will one day be able to control, but I'm not going to let that be the determining card. Me smoking weed every day can't be the difference between me achieving maximum success or not. That's crazy. If I was, how powerless am I? What a pussy I am if it's just weed that it is. So I almost look at it like that. But that philosophy, I sort of like, you know, I live my life by, and most people don't, right? And this is why when you, like, as a brown person, you know, look, dude, I dealt with like real racism, and I you know, I'm a Puerto Rican man in society. People, I think they get it twisted, right? But I was a victim of like massive racism growing up as a kid, and I look at that. And I look at the color of my skin, and I wear it as a badge of honor, and I'm proud of who I am and where I came from. I just sort of look at, when you look at sort of the woke movement and the way that people are, I was like, no, like, these are all just like, whether you look at it as good, bad, what disadvantage or advantage, I was like, these are all just cards. It doesn't really matter. And if I live my life by that philosophy, why shouldn't everybody? That's the standard which I put on myself, where it's like, you know what? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that I grew up poor. It doesn't matter that I'm brown. It doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. The only thing that matters is sort of my attitude. And I just sort of see everybody in society looking for a reason as to why they were disenfranchised or they weren't given the opportunity. And I just see people missing the point of life all around us at all times.
Yeah. These days it's tough to be a white male, LOL. And we try to do the best we can with what we have here. I'm just joking. How do you smoke weed all day, but you seem like you're like sharp as a razor. So do you take some kind of alpha brain or anything?
No, I stopped taking Adderall because I was crazy. I was on Vyvanse and Adderall, and it was really putting me on edge.
How did you get off of that? That's because I was on Adderall. It's kind of addictive.
It just wasn't making me happy. You know, I had a coke problem for a little while, and then once I started seeing a therapist and got on Adderall, I stopped doing coke because that's really what I wanted. I just wanted to be clear-headed, I think.
Yeah, totally. I feel you.
I had it was a really, really bad coke problem.
Oh, wow.
When me and my son's mother broke up, like secretly, but it was secret. I didn't talk about it. I was doing it alone.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
That. It's not.
And then I got, cool. Then I got on Adderall and Vyvanse for a while, and it felt like when I first took Vyvanse when I first took Adderall, it felt like the world all came in, became clear. Everything like it was. I almost got emotional. It was like, this is like, I was like, really? Like high school could have been good for me? Like,
wow.
And then the negative outweighed the positive, right? So after a while, it was like I was just walking around like I was fighting with everybody, arguing with everybody. That whole fight where me and Kurt Metzger got into it at the Comedy Store in LA, there's like a famous thing where I threw a drink at him. It was like nuts. Was because I was so hyped up on Adderall. I was just on fucking edge. Don't get me wrong, I probably still would have gotten into it with him, but I think that was the last time that I took Adderall because I was like, I'm getting crazy, dude. I'm like, this is nuts. And I was just walking around, I was like a ball of energy, and there was obviously positive benefits because it really helped with my ADD, and I was, finishing projects and honestly, I think it was probably good for me at the time because we were starting Gas Digital, right? And we had these businesses that we were starting and all these things, and I was hyper focused at that time. And but it was me. I mean, it got really bad after a while, and I was just like, this just isn't good for me. I don't like the way that I feel, and I would take the pill, and then I would just start, immediately to feel kind of like just almost too awake, too like on edge. So,
it worked for the time.
Yeah, and honestly, once my responsibilities shifted in a very, very big way. Like I think in the beginning, me and Ralph were doing a lot of the stuff on our own, whereas now we have a large team of people that can handle a lot of the stuff that we don't need to do anymore.
Beautiful. Yeah, good. Yeah, because when I was doing it, I was building SHEATH, and it kind of served its purpose, but then it ran its course, and it's time to move on and get back to nature, maybe some mushrooms, a little bit of weed.
Hell yeah.
That's better. We're gonna wrap it up here shortly, but I have 2 podcasts today. This is one of them, in a live stream right after this. Typically I do like 1 podcast a week, but I felt like I was really doing my best when I was doing like 3 podcasts a week, because it just kind of exercised that muscle, the communication muscle. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, some people, because I do. Let me see. 3 Real Ass podcasts a week, 1 Yo MMA Rap, 2 Legion of Skanks. So that's 3 hours, 4 hours, roughly like 9-10 hours of podcasting a week. And some people are like, oh, well, how do you talk for that much? I think the first time you do a podcast, you're like, how do I even fill half an hour? It's like kind of like it's nerve wracking.
A little bit.
Well, what do I say? It's almost like the same philosophy of like just doing it, just jump in. You have to. If you want to, for me, if I want to be a podcasting professional, I got to be able to do that. I got to be able to. So it was almost like I just jumped in and I said, all right, well, if I'm going to do my podcast 3 times a week, I don't know what the fuck we're going to talk about, but it's my job to make it good, and I trust my own instincts. So without a doubt, practice is going to make you better. It's going to, I think it takes a while to get really comfortable, talking on microphones and talking to strangers and, understanding how to build a dynamic quickly with somebody new.
Yeah.
That's, a whole other skill set. There's a lot of layers to being a good podcaster that people don't understand. But yeah, I mean, obviously I think so. Just the more you do it, the better you're going to be.
Yeah. I'm going to keep practicing. Do you know who Mr. Beast is?
I'm hearing his name more and more.
Okay, so because I watched him on Rogan and he was talking about how he's the world's leading content creator on YouTube.
Yeah.
And just the way he studied YouTube and really mastered how to maximize the reach, and it made me think of back when you were doing Believe You Me, RIP, no, I'm just kidding. We don't believe you me. But Yo MMA Raps is what I listen to now. That was a whole weird controversy, but when you guys were doing thumbnails, like really creatively putting yours and Mike's head on other kind of just old art or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think like that's kind of one of the things Mr. Beast does. And I was wondering where you pick that up. Are you studying how to get better, how to get more reach? And
so this is probably one of the major benefits of having a podcast network, right? So we have a meeting every Monday at 1:15 p.m. where all of our producers, all 11 producers, 3 engineers, all the post-production guys, our ad sales team guys as it relates, where we all come in and we share ideas. Typically me and Ralph sort of lead the meeting. We'll talk about these certain, bullet point things that we have to discuss for the week. But then what we try to do is we try to make it an open forum where we discuss what's working, what's not working. This is the major benefit of having a network, because you have a bunch of people that are trying different things, a bunch of people that are coming back and saying, well, this is working for this guy. This is a like-minded podcast with a like-minded audience. This is going to work here. The trial and error process is very, very fast, and I think that unquestionably, like, I don't know, somebody probably watched Mr. Beast. Somebody probably said, oh, dude, he's doing this. This is really cool. And then they brought it and they said, hey, why don't we try this style thumbnail? You'll see all the podcasts are always doing different things, because every podcast, they're their own business. If you're a host of your own show, you should be your own executive producer, right? You should be the number one producer in your show. If you're the host, it's your show, right?
Right.
So everybody's got a different feel. Everybody's got a different thing, but it's our job to come back and say, hey, this is working. There's certain shows that maybe they don't have big numbers on iTunes or on YouTube, but maybe the host has a huge following on social media. Well, let's start posting the full episodes to your Instagram. Why not?
Yeah.
That's just views, 100%. Those are people that are watching that, right? There's and this from the advertiser side, because we're constantly coming up with new ways to advertise, new ways that we can, incorporate brands with smaller shows that maybe now a smaller show, maybe they don't have as large of an audience, but that smaller show, that audience is fucking hardcore. If there's a show that has 5,000 listeners, those 5,000 people will go to war for that show. That they feel like they're on the inside of something cool. They feel like it's punk rock. They feel like and then when something grows to a larger scale, the fans feel less of an emotional connection with it typically. And I think the reason why Legion of Skanks has been so successful is because we grew to a large scale and the fans still feel that emotional connection. And we're not the biggest show, but I don't think many other shows can do something like Skankfest or build an entire podcast network based off of the dedication of their fans. Our fans are a special breed.
Wow. Yeah, I love the support of the fans. Thank you, Legion. Because there's no other comedy festival in America that I'm aware of. There's probably is, but like Skankfest is the leading. You have the best comedians coming in, and it was really fun, and everyone was awesome. All the guests, all the talent, everyone was kind of just mingling, and it's a really cool atmosphere that you've set up. Are there any other? I guess we don't need to talk about.
There's a ton of other festivals. They just don't do them like we do them. The big difference is it's a big party. It's one venue. It's a big hang. Very limited amount of tickets that are sold for it. It's the cool festival that you want to go to if you're a comedian. Even if the ones that don't want to admit it, they all want to be there, right? And the audience, our audience, like, they will support SHEATH because you support us, and that's a real thing. And that's the type of thing where, like, people don't, look. We very often when you hear, hey, go do this, 20% off, you get this promo code, whatever it is, right? very often it has to be a good product that resonates with the audience, right? Just very often you have to have that. I feel like Legion of Skanks fans would fucking support anything. Now, when you have a great product like Sheath in combination with the fact that our audience fucking loves to support, then you knock it out of the park. And that's why Sheath's been around for so long with us. It's because there's certain products that not only resonate with everybody. You see it with your brand, with the MMA audience, and it's truly a great product. I don't bullshit. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I swear to God, I would just wear different underwear and I would talk about it. There's plenty of products that I don't use. I don't smoke vape pens. I don't smoke vape. You know what I'm saying? So right. I'll do the ad read, and there's other people in the studio who use those vape pens and they're great. But the reality is, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. You have a legitimately great product. I don't wear any other underwear. No other underwear fit me the way that Sheath fit me. They feel really great. They look great. So when you have that on top of the fact that we have an audience that wants to support our sponsors, it just completely knocks it out of the park. And that's why Sheath has become a part of the Gas Digital and Legion of Skanks culture. You know what I'm saying? Like if people think about men's underwear, that if you're a Legion of Skanks fan, your mind immediately goes to Sheath immediately. And I think that's a great example of just finding synergy between two companies and figuring out how you can make your brands overlap, and it's great. Sheath is almost like it's personified, and not only by you actually being at the forefront of it, because you are very involved in people who know you specifically, but I almost feel like Sheath, its own Sheath is its own soul. It has its own aura. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's alive.
Yeah, people feel it. They really do. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I really believe that.
Well, I think that's a great segue to the end here. I really believe in what you're doing. Gas Digital Network, all of your podcasts. My favorite one.
You guys are coming back. One of the stages is going to be a Sheath stage this year at Skankfest, which we're excited about. Yes. I'll throw some fucking names out. When does this come out?
Monday. Who?
Get you a couple names.
Seinfeld?
Maybe you see Jim Norton there.
Ooh.
Maybe you see TJ Miller there. Who knows?
Who knows who's going to be there?
Maybe you see Tim Dillon at Skankfest. Maybe Nick Mullen's going to be at Skankfest. You know what? I can't give any more. There's so many.
There were so many. And everyone.
I won't even get into it.
Yeah.
Maybe Alice Mania is returning to Skankfest. Who knows?
Ooh, that was so fun. I ended up fighting after. We still haven't released our vlog from Skankfest, Matt. Let's get that out, because I ended up fighting in that ring where you fought Jason and you tore him up in the first round. That's right.
That's great, dude. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for the footage. I got 2 takedowns, but I got kind of injured. The mat is harder than you think.
Oh, yeah. That was a boxing ring. It wasn't for MMA.
It hurt my shoulder. But anyways, we had a really good time. We're really looking forward to Vegas in October 14th through the 16th. I heard tickets already sold out in 2 seconds.
The 40% of the pre-sale tickets are gone. The tickets go on sale Tuesday, April 12th at 12 noon Eastern. You got to get there right at 12 noon Eastern. They're going to probably go very, very fast. We only have 60% of the tickets left. The first 40% sold out in 3 minutes. So.
Wow. Well, it's going to be a blast. COVID's over. We're back, baby.
Hell yeah.
We're moving forward. Gas Digital and Sheath Underwear, Louis J. Gomez, Legion of Skanks, thank you for coming on. And I will see you in Vegas.
You're the man. Thanks, Robert.
Do you have anything else? You're good. You have any?
No, we're all good, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. You're the best.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Hell yeah, dude. Thanks, Robert.